Okay.
This is recording.
Recording. Recording? I think we're recording.
Yeah.
I think we're good. That will be a fantastic start to this video. Are we recording? Are we recording? I think we're recording. I look like an owl. What? Who? Where? So hi guys, welcome back to Views with Verse, and today we have the lovely Miss Allorah on the channel, and we're going to talk about spiritual things. That's as far as we got.
We're just gonna roll with it.
It's December. I have no mental capacity left. Everything is 100 miles a minute, so you're getting what we're giving, basically. But I thought we would talk about like the atmosphere around things of late. I was thinking about fear yesterday. I was thinking about doing another live stream on it, and I might, about how there's an awful lot of fear around right now. And I want to talk about this in terms of spirituality with Allorah, because Allorah's done a couple of live streams and some blog posts which sort of address issues that she felt needed to be kind of head-on Virgo spoken about.
Oops. Oh, well, where would you like to start?
Well, okay. Why did you feel that you needed to put these pieces out? Like, what was the inspiration behind that? Like, is it been a building thing to the point where you got fed up and posted about these things, or has it just been like issues have seemed more maybe prevalent right now and that needed a kind of a push?
So, well, a lot of the things that I'm seeing as far as the atmosphere when it comes to spiritual vlogging, and I've also had conversations with a lot of practitioners here and there on social media and whatnot. And it's interesting because there are so many of them that have like really creative ideas, but they are afraid of just putting it out there and doing it and being themselves. And I felt that way about my writing. And I think for me, especially with writing is something I've done since I was a small girl, but it's not something I talk about. It's not something that I don't typically share it a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And so to put that out there in such a public manner is basically opening your soul up,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
all my insides. So, and that was a big hurdle for me. So yeah, I think people are in the spiritual vlogging community are really feeling that all the way around. I don't know if it's, just an energetic thing, or if there's some planets that are messing things up, or what.
Bit of everything, maybe. Yeah.
And then as far as when I was telling you when I did the live video on Facebook, I just, I got really tired of the repetition of everything, and I'm like, come on, let's think outside the box, please.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is a Virgo thing. I wonder if we see the patterns, because everyone, like Chris says to me, like Virgos see the patterns, so they're the most like easy people to get to predict the future because they see the patterns and they can make a judgment. And I wonder if it's like a Virgo / Earth sign thing where you see it in all these patterns over and over again. And you're like, can we not? Can we do something else? Please. But I remember when I first put a blog piece out for Witch, which was Bad Witch at the time, but now they're just Witch. And that was nerve-wracking. And that was talking about kind of like reclaiming yourself and kind of pushing past this idea of being defined by other people and things. And that's really at the forefront again. I've been sharing the same post from a while back, like, yeah, I've done this already, like years ago. Here you go. Like,
yeah, well, when it comes so with the blog pieces, actually the one that has gotten the most attention was the first one that I really spoke my mind and put out there.
mm-hmm.
And that was about not being a very copy paste practitioner. Like, don't do spells word for word, don't do your rituals word for word. And that's something that I don't know if it's because I've seen an influx in not so much, I mean, maybe newer practitioners, but also practitioners that I've never met. And so with them being introduced to me, like me getting introduced to this whole new group of people, like I start noticing patterns. And so then I'm like, oh wait, what? No, like what? And it goes back again to this, I feel like there's a creative block in you use this word. What did you say? How did you say it? Spiritual climate or something?
Yeah.
It was your blogs.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I love that.
Or the ecosystem.
Yeah, spiritual ecosystem. There you go.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a creative block within the whole spiritual ecosystem, but essentially nobody's wanting to put themselves into their spell work or their creative pursuits, or, it's very much, it's very fear-based at this point. I feel it.
Yeah, I've noticed that there is a definite funk in the atmosphere, and it started, I want to say, the end of October. I started noticing it, and it's kind of just been getting more and more blocked up with people, and people they don't want to do. They just everybody's been kind of like hermiting back and kind of going introverted a lot of the time now. In the northern hemisphere, it is going into the winter solstice kind of thing, so there's that kind of energy around as well, but there is this kind of reluctance to even want to speak. And then we've got Mercury retrograde right now, so everything, I spent a good 10 minutes trying to get my camera to work again this morning, like, come on Mercury, enough now. But yeah, there's absolutely been this kind of hesitation thing going on, and it was really lovely to see that, you were coming out and speaking about things and being like, we need to look at this and change it. We need to get deeper with this. Because I've noticed for a very long time that kind of when you're looking for educational materials, you kind of get to the beginner stuff and then it seems to stop.
Uh-huh.
And all the books are 101s. Mm-hmm. Like Wicca 101, Witchcraft 101, whatever 101. And you're like, okay, but when you've gotten past that point, then what? And that bothered me for years. Like, there is no material being deeper. Like, what am I supposed to do if I'm like sat here like, well, I know this bit and I'm pretty proficient at that bit, and that bit comes naturally, then where am I supposed to be going? And there's kind of like this sea of silence about it, and then you kind of have to decide for yourself and kind of play with ideas yourself and kind of just spiritually deepen yourself, and it all becomes very personal after a certain point. I wonder if that's why we don't hear so much from people after a certain point, because people are happy to talk about things up to a certain sort of step, but then once you get past that point, you kind of drop into the ocean with it and you're kind of like swimming about a bit. And it's like, do I sound crazy comes to mind, and does anyone else experience it like this, or is it just me? And then of course you get people jumping on you for personal gnosis anyway, like, no, how dare you make a thing up, like
that's that's so funny, because when I did the blog post about Odin is not in your grilled cheese, and you commented, I was sitting there thinking, I was like, I hope she understands what I mean, because we all experience things differently. Mm-hmm. We have all met that one person that's just like, you're just like looking at him and you're like, nah, bro, like you're taking this way too far.
Yeah, where that was lack of grounding, I think. Like, there is no, because for me there's a difference, because people who are watching this later, who might not have seen your post yet, and I will put Allorah's links down below and try and remember that, because my brain's been fried. Brain, remember that for later. But that particular post was about how some people kind of, they see spiritual stuff in every single little thing to the point where they're not really living.
Right.
And that's kind of escapism to me. It's rather than seeing the spiritual and magical in everything, which I think is really easily doable, it's possible, it's just that you kind of have to ground that, and so you're not always like off in the ether all the time, if that makes sense. You're not like forgetting to pay your bills or forgetting to eat or things because you're too busy with like the spirit communication or whatever. There has to be kind of like that balance. But you can find the spiritual and magical in, say, like eating food and cooking food. It's an alchemy all of itself, but it's kind of like prioritizing maybe the out of body stuff a bit too much and not anchoring, I think, is what we're going for. But yeah.
And can I just say, when you were talking about the how people have been introverted and not so much is coming out, the thing that popped into my head was spiritually constipated.
That's the title for this video. Are you spiritually constipated?
You're like describing it, and I'm like, holy crap, we're constipated.
We need prunes. Everybody in the spiritual community right now needs prunes. That's what it is.
Oh, Lord help me.
But I mean, we do get it though. Like, we all have those moments of spiritual and magical constipation where nothing seems to work, where we're like hitting up against ourselves. Like, I can't seem to build my energy up. I can't seem to get out of this sluggish funk. I can't seem to get excited about things. And there's an energy of that right now. Like yesterday I was like, ugh. The whole day I was just like, ugh. I can't be dealing with this today. And I think there is that atmosphere in general in terms of like spiritual community and things. So we'll ask Laura, how would you get past that? How do you deal with spiritual constipation? How do you get excited about stuff? What's your prunes?
What is your prunes? Oh man. Okay, so for me, when I'm spiritually constipated, it's okay. So I don't know how much of the fact that I'm a Virgo plays into this, probably a lot, but I'm very, so I have all the emotions, but I keep them all really locked away. But I give myself like a time limit. Like if I'm having feels, if I'm this, that, whatever, I'm like, all right, basically like I give myself a pep talk and I'm like, all right, you get to feel however you want to feel for the next 24 hours. After that, you got to get up and you got to do something. I don't know if, I mean, and it seemed to work for me really well. But that's because I think you have to experiment and trial and error and, you know, try different things and find what works for you. Because like I said, this works for me. I don't know how many other people it would work for. But because, because you're a Virgo, but when you're a Virgo, like everything is very structured. And so as long as I know that I can have emotions, but it's got a structure, like I get to put them in this box. And then after this amount of time, this box is closing and we're going to put it away and then we're going to go do stuff. And then, but usually within that time frame, like that's not to say that I don't address and deal with emotions, because during that time frame, I'll journal or I'll do, whatever things that, to work through those emotions and energies. And then after that time limit, it's like, all right, it's enough. Yeah. Like I don't allow myself to wallow. Like it's just not an option.
I do it too. I do that kind of thing where I'm like, right, okay, well, if nothing's getting done today, then we write today off and we're going to just start fresh tomorrow and get proactive again tomorrow. And I think the action part is really helpful, especially if you're a Virgo, but especially if you suffer with any kind of depression or anxiety or anything like that. Sometimes the taking yourself out of your head and just doing something can really help with that. And it can really help just to get moving or just go out and in the outside world or just get, creating something. And that can just help you naturally start to come back. Music is a really good one for me too. It's like sometimes if I'm in that place where I'm annoyed by something and I've got that irk under my skin and it won't go away, then I'll be like, right, so we're going to listen to some angry music for half an hour, then we'll listen to some soothing music for half an hour, and that should deal with it. Like just bubble it all up and then release it. And very much like you would with magic, like, because that's how you're building your energy and your emotions up to then release them. So it's kind of like, right, take that sort of magical formula of build, and then release, and then that's gone. So that's one way in which I would suggest for everybody watching later. I'm trying to think.
Yeah. Let me think. Well, writing, I mean, of course, well, with this little box, this little box that I, this little time frame, typically that's when my most creative writing comes out. Because a lot of people that watch YouTube and, see us vlogging and stuff, like, I'm okay at this medium, but really when it comes to writing, that's where I lay my soul out. Like, that's where you can see exactly who I am. I don't know why that is. It's just always been the way that I've been.
Virgo thing, apparently.
Do what?
It's supposed to be a Virgo thing.
Oh, is it?
I was reading that the other day, and it was like Virgos express themselves better with writing. I was like, oh,
makes sense.
I can see that.
I don't know why that is. It's so funny because the way that I speak is not as elegant as I write. I don't know why. Like, it's not like I sit there for hours and ponder what I'm going to write. Like, I just sit and the words pour, and then I read it and I'm like, holy shit, that came out of my brain and my fingers. Like, what? Like, who wrote that?
I've looked back at pieces and I'm like, did I write this? Because sometimes when I'm speaking, I'm like, there's a camera. But no, that doesn't happen with words. I think words have that kind of elegance to them, though, don't they? They kind of have the way that people can interact with them is a little bit broader, whereas you get like tone and inflection and things when you're speaking, but when it's written down, people can interact with it a little bit more freely. They can interact with it how they perceive it to be, which is a benefit and a minus in some cases. And people are taking your writing and like completely wrong, and you're like, what? No.
No, read that again. Well, and this is an interesting segue, but just yesterday, the government here banned specific words from being used. Did you read about that?
Yeah, I was like, George Orwell, here we come.
I was looking at the screen like this. like how is that gonna happen? But
they're really weird words as well, aren't they? They're basically like emotionally loaded words for the media to be using.
But I think with that kind of stuff happening where I am, here in America, I think all of that is having an effect as well on the content and the capacity in which spiritual practitioners feel they can be creative with the current climate of YouTube itself, because they are filtering out a lot of spiritual content, and just because it has this word or that word or what have you, it's becoming ridiculous, essentially. Like, I live in a country where speech is, you have the freedom of speech, or you have all the way up until now, and now it seems like
they're trying to take away. Yeah,
they're trying to make us be quiet, and I'm just like, oh no. Like, like, you can take a lot of things from me, but you're not taking my words. Like, gotta draw the line.
It's a strange thing. I've noticed it obviously on YouTube because I've actually been targeted by the censorship already. So I have felt it already. But it's a really strange thing, and I'm interested to see if it's going to cause more marching and pushback against the American government. And if they try that here, I guarantee I'll be on the front line somewhere, because you can't police the words that people use. It's ridiculous. You're just inviting uprising.
Right. Exactly.
Because how on earth, like, it feels really, and maybe that's why we've got this spiritual constipation thing going on, because people are feeling that tightening of like that noose-like feeling with the government being like, right, well, now you can't have these words in the media, and you can't use these words online, and then we're gonna fuck with net neutrality. So even like your freedom with the internet is being slowly like noosed, and kind of like the freedom of speech. God, this got political really quick. The freedom of speech is kind of like this noose thing going around it with the government right now, especially in America. I mean, it's worse in certain places of the world, sure, but when you're in the West and these are supposed to be like the leading the world, and they're like, now you can't use this word, and we can't talk about devastation, and we can't talk about we can't, was it fetus? You can't say fetus anymore. And I was like, that's a medical term. Like,
but see, that is the funny part to me, is that, so this 7-word ban came out against the CDC. The CDC in America is the Center for Disease Control. These are the guys that research diseases to help us be healthier. But I'm thinking, you know, and these words got banned from their official reports. And I'm sitting here thinking, how in the hell are you going to write about women and children's health and never use the word fetus? Like, good luck with that. Like, that makes no sense.
no.
I'm just like, what? And, you know, they said it was for budgetary concerns, right? They, you know, that I don't understand why. This is
because words cost money. Okay.
But then they said they were given substitution, like words to substitute. Yeah. So they nixed like one word and they gave them a sentence that's like this long. And I'm like, that's not saving paper. Like, right there. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But I mean, I know like we're talking politics, but really I think it has a lot to do with how people feel right now, because when you feel like you're being silenced and oppressed on a larger scale by a government or a nation, or, you know, any of those, or your freedoms are being taken away, or, you know, you're being told you can't do this, you can't do that. I think it does mess with your spiritual practice. I'm sure it does.
Well, witches have always been on the fringes of society anyway. I mean, the whole point that there is a term, witch hunt, which doesn't necessarily refer to witches. It's a broad term for one group of people being targeted and come after by the powers that be, is indicative, I think. And I think that's why a lot of people have started closing down their YouTube channels. They just don't feel safe anymore. They don't feel safe in an environment which has kind of played to those that would go after people of different religious denominations just because they can. It's not even necessarily about the religion for some. For some, it is purely a kind of like religious hate thing, but for some it's just an excuse. And I think people are feeling frightened right now of the repercussions just for being spiritually different and talking about it, like verbalizing it. And America is a far scarier place than I can imagine. I mean,
oh God, you make it sound like I'm not going to the 7 pits of hell.
You're leaving. Who's leaving? That's what I'm saying. Getting out.
But you know, and the sad part is that my country is really great. Like, there are certain parts of this country that are amazing, like the Grand Canyon and like Yellowstone, and, you know, all these natural places we have here are really awesome. But I don't know. It's just becoming more and more like, every time I see a news, I quit watching the news because all it does is piss me off. So I'm like, nope, just not gonna watch. But every time I do see a news story, it evokes the same reaction out of me, which is, really? It just gets more ridiculous by the day. But so anyways, yes, I think political atmosphere does mess with spiritual atmosphere for sure. And your surroundings, your environment, where you're living, working, you know, all those things. Because even though we're spiritual people, we still have to muggle, if you will.
Well, there's different things as well. There's like, here they tried to make out that animals aren't sentient. And they had this, and it was basically them trying to get fox hunting back. And bearing in mind that in England, which is not where I am anymore, something like 90% of the populace voted against fox hunting, to ban it, to get rid of it. So it was clearly the voice of the people to get rid of it. Like, this is something that we don't want. And bear in mind, the rich still do it illegally and don't get charged, which is a whole other kettle of fish, or kettle of foxes, whichever. And they're trying to like make out that animals aren't sentient now. Now imagine that in terms of your spiritual path working, because for me, the sentience of everything is interconnected. We're all in this ecosystem. Like animals are sentient, plants are sentient, trees are sentient. It's all different ways of communicating, but we're all sentient. We're all alive. And you've got certain groups of people in the political system trying to make out that animals who are clearly sentient are not. And it's like and in one way it kind of gives witches kind of like a calling card. It's like, we need to stand up against this right now because this is nonsense. No. And people have been, which is good. And they kind of like, it happened with the Trump and the elephants and the ivory in America too, because he like backtracked on that one, I think. So
well, okay, hold on, because I'm gonna insert something here. That's just something that I did not read, but I heard it off the cuff, basically from someone I know. So interestingly enough, I guess, I don't know how true this is, but interestingly enough, the whole ivory thing that happened with the elephants and the hunting, supposedly, so first of all, it was shitty. So we're just going to put that out there. Like, this is, they just did the wrong thing. But supposedly the idea behind it was people are hunting them on the black market anyways. Like, poachers are hunting for these tusks and they're selling them whatever. So I guess the theory, like, they thought basically like, if we make it legal, we can regulate it type thing. I don't know how true that is. But who knows? I don't know. I mean, that's just like in some countries, they've legalized all drugs because they were tired of fighting a war on drugs. So they just legalized them and are like, okay, so now everything's legal and you come here to get it. So I don't know. I don't know if they've just lost their friggin' minds or what. And that's with like orca whales as well, like SeaWorld and all that debacle. Like, I've been doing support that, or what is it, Empty the Tanks. It's an organization over here. And there has been some really great ground that has been made there, but I mean, it's still not over. But I mean, people just amaze me though. It's amazing to me. Like, especially with killer whales, like, you think that putting the world's largest alpha predator of the sea in a bathtub is a brilliant idea. Like who's the guy that thought of this?
I mean, I understand that there are some people, this is not orca whales at all, but there are some people who are trying to conservate and try and like make sure that animals don't die out through conservation. And they do that with elephants, I think. I think they have like places in Africa, and they are having to fight back against people who are then poaching on conservation land. And that's one of the problems of making it legal, is then at least if it's illegal, these people who are on conservations and things, they can take action against the people who are illegally poaching on conservation land. And if you make it legal, then they have more problems, I would imagine, to stop that happening.
Yeah, I don't know what these people are thinking.
I think it's all a bit like, yeah, it's all a bit, and the problem with hunting is then you get arguments like, oh, well, if we don't kill all these wolves, then they're going to take over and there's going to be no wildlife. And I'm like, is that true though?
Yeah.
Is that accurate though? Like, wouldn't nature's ecosystem kind of balance out? Isn't it just humans fucking interfering with everything, that's making a mess of everything?
Now, I will say, when it comes to hunting, like, I don't know if it's the same over there as it is here, but I'm a huge fan of venison. I love deer meat. And I'm, obviously I'm not a vegan or anything, but I have different views on hunting. If you're hunting deer and you're eating it and you're using the skin and you're using the antlers and you're actually honoring the deer that way, then yeah, by all means, like, I'm okay with hunting. And in fact, that's how our ancestors lived for a billion years. So that doesn't bother me. But the trophy hunting and things like that is just unnecessary.
Yep, that's how I feel about it too. I'm a meat eater too, and I feel pretty much the same way about. We don't have it here in the UK because obviously we're nowhere near as big as America, and I just imagine that there isn't a whole lot of land the same way there would be for like the hunting and things, and the general populace of animals to breed that massively. I'm guessing the disproportion there would mean that it's not really a thing over here. But having heard all sides of it with regards to Americas and things, that's how I feel about it too. I'm like, okay, if you're hunting and you're feeding your family and you're using all the parts of the animal and you're honoring that kill and it's the natural cycle, that's something completely different to like going out and shooting an animal just for its tusk to hang on your wall. To me, that's it. One's kind of like a blood sport and one's like part of the natural ways of life to me. The same way that I'm okay with meat eating, I'm not okay with battery farming. I'm not okay with like shoving all these animals into a tiny little pen in terrible conditions. No, I'm not okay with that. Not okay with pumping them full of drugs either for the same purposes. And it's about the ethics for me behind the life of the animal in general, and then what's happening in its life and in its death, and like honoring it. And I feel this way because I honestly believe plants are just a sentient. I think there is this generalized feeling that plants are not sentient, so it's fine to eat plants and things because they're not sentient. And it's like, well, they're not sentient in the same way, sure, but science is catching up, and science knows that plants communicate with each other, and like plants have a fear response, and trees communicate with each other. And there's been some really interesting like scientific studies where the plants actually form and trees actually form communities, so that at certain times of year, nutrients in the ecosystem go from certain types of trees to other trees that suffer at certain times of year, and then back at the other time of year, so they support one another. And if you're chopping down a tree, it sends fear signals through the ecosystem to the other trees, and plants do this too, and so they have a fear response. It's just we don't perceive it in the same way. So if we are witches and we believe in like honoring life, then we have to honor all life, and not just humans and not just animals, but the entire planet. So basically, no matter what you do, you're eating something sentient.
And you know, you're talking about plants being sentient, and I've been into hoodoo lately a lot. And that's what like a lot of hoodoo is based on, is the sentient nature of plants. And so yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you for sure. I don't think that it's necessarily an easy thing to do in the world that we live in, because it's half of, well, gardening in some places is not allowed for powers that be reasons. And but there are alternatives. There are indoor gardens and things like that. And yeah, if you are interested in gardening and you don't have a place to garden, there are ways you can do Pinterest. There are ways you can indoor garden. There's ways you can rooftop garden, things like that. And I think because of the modern world that we live in and the amount of technology that we have and stuff, I mean, on the one hand, it's great, but on the other hand, it kind of disconnects us a lot of the time. Like I think witches have to make concerted effort to get outside, to go somewhere where there's no city block or concrete or whatever, what have you. Because if you don't, I mean, at least where I live, if you don't make a concerted effort to do so, you're not really going to find nature, because this is a city where I live. So it's a constant disconnect. It's not like, back in the day where you have a little cottage on, in the middle of the woods and nobody bothers you. I wish it was. Right. I mean, there's certainly places where that's reality.
Yeah.
But it's few and far between.
If we went to the other side of Scotland, maybe, like I keep hoping will happen one day, because we're in the city right now, and even though we're in the city, though, we're not that far away from nature at any given point. I can walk 10 minutes one direction to a huge park, and I can walk half an hour to the sea for the first time in a long time. I can go to the sea quite easily, and that's kind of helped me on certain levels, because being near the sea has helped me a huge deal. But I feel like sometimes we get that kind of spiritual constipation again from being disconnected from nature and these ideas. We kind of separate ourselves off from the idea that everybody's and everything is sentient, and like mainly we're taught that way. Like food comes in a box, we don't really consider it from the supermarket, and you don't there's no learning there, there's no honoring the kill there, there's no understanding of life and death there. You can get told it, and sometimes you can even get shown these videos and things if you come across them, or you get taught it as a kid, but there's still like a screen between you and learning these things. And I wonder if there's not a level of kind of disconnect that happens there just in everyday life that we're kind of having to combat by going out into nature and going out and embracing it and getting back to roots and things. Yep, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you mentioned living by the sea. I grew up by the Atlantic Ocean for a lot of my childhood, and then I lived on the Pacific coast in my early 20s, and yeah, so since I was 20, I'm thinking 25-ish, so almost 10 years, I haven't been by the ocean, and I'm getting ready to go live by the Indian Ocean, and I'm so stoked, and it's a totally different ocean than I'm used to, so I can't wait. Okay, go ahead.
Does it feel different down there? You know, when you like got your feet on the earth and that kind of vibe, how did it feel?
Well, it is much more, it's much more peaceful than our shorelines, at least the ones that I've been to. Maybe it's just because I have grown up by the oceans here, but I feel like you can feel a lot more of the environmental trauma on our shorelines than there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like for instance, with Fujiyama, or I think that's, or Fukushima, that's what it is. Fujiyama is a restaurant. It's early, folks, and I'm still on coffee one. Fukushima. But that's the type of trauma I'm talking about. Like you can kind of, it's just yuck a little bit, you know. But when I went over there, it was just, I don't know, it was like you could breathe better. That makes sense. You're just like, oh.
I felt a perceptible shift when I crossed over the boundary from England to Scotland. And it was really bizarre to me because I felt it. Like I was on a train, so I wasn't like on the ground or anything, but as I crossed over from England into Scotland, I felt a perceptible shift. And it was weird to me. I was like, that's because I was expecting to feel more like a fish out of water than I do, because a lot of the Scottish don't care for the English for all sorts of reasons. I've not had much of that at all. And instead I felt like it was coming home. It was really odd. And there's a level of one of my spiritual guardians was a Scot, and is a Scot. Bit of both. Was a Scot, is a Scot. Spirits. Which pronoun do you want? And so coming back across the border was really interesting because it felt like coming home. It felt like spiritual kind of.
Yeah,
that was like unexpected to me.
Like I don't know how to put that into words.
No. It's just like your whole body relaxes and your spirit's like, yeah, this feels better. Don't know why, just does. That kind of feeling.
Yeah, and it was so funny to me though, because when I went there, so there are of course stereotypes across the board both ways, and it was quite interesting because the people that I interacted with, of course, they could tell, you know, I have an accent, you know, American accent. So they would ask me where I was from, and, you know, I'd tell them. And the funny thing is that most of them said, you're nothing like what we think Americans are like. And I'm like, oh, like, how's that? And they're like, oh, well, you guys are loud and obnoxious and just, in everybody's face. And I'm like, no, not me. So it was really interesting because, I still felt the culture difference when interacting with people. But as far as the land was concerned, I kept telling people it was like, I'm serious, like, it's like America, but when I was little. Like, that's the feeling that I got. Like, because when I was young, like over here, we could play in the street until the street lights went out. You weren't worried that somebody was going to get kidnapped or, gunned down in the street or anything like that. It was very much, suburbia. It was safe and there wasn't a whole lot. My parents left the car doors unlocked and our house door was always unlocked, and we ran in and out, things like that. So yeah, when I went there, it's very much that feeling. Like it's not, you're not on guard all the time. It's just different, at least for me.
Do you feel a bit like the fear might have seeped into the actual land of America a little bit then? If you felt like when you went somewhere else, it gave you that childhood feeling of being safer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a definite possibility. And I think, and if we want to go all the way back with the America, talking about America, I think that started a way long time ago. And to be precise, it probably started September 11th, 2001. Because from that point on, there was a huge shift here, and it's just never been the same. And I don't know that it ever will be. Now, whether, I'm not getting into all that, but anyways, yeah. So 2001, there's definitely been a lot more fear in the whole of this country than there used to be, for sure. For sure.
I wonder if it's a global thing.
Huh?
I'm wondering if it's a global thing. There has been a lot more of a fear thing lately, and I'm just wondering if that's kind of lending itself. Like the more fear-based everything gets, like the more introverted everybody gets, because they just don't want to interact anymore. They don't want to.
Right. They don't want to watch the news.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, why am I going to watch that? I'm going to turn it on. It's going to be shit. It's going to make me mad. And then I'm going to be angry the rest of the day. Nope.
Yeah. I kind of stopped watching it after we had Brexit and then Trump won in America. I was like, I'm not watching the news anymore. I'm not watching the news anymore. I'm done. And since then, I haven't really watched it too much. So, yeah. So we're about approaching time for the cutoff point for Zoom, because Zoom will cut off in the next 5 minutes, I think, for recording. I'm not really sure. So is there anything you'd like to plug at the tail end of the video for spread the switches or anything like that you want to announce?
Yeah. So we are over at STW Spread the Switches. If you guys don't know what that is, me and Avalon Cameron and Chase Two Owls, we do a broadcast. Usually it's bi-weekly, and it's divination and magic based, and we bring people on the show. And right now we're on a break because I'm moving to Australia for 7 months and the holidays and all that. But when we come back, the beautiful Joey Morris and the king of controversy, which is somewhere smoking a cigarette, I'm sure.
No, he better not be in the other room. He'll be wanting one after we're done. He's out the window, that's it, because I don't smoke.
But they will be joining us, and they're going to be talking about runes and Ogham-Fuse, which is awesome. And it's a 2-part series because you guys are going to talk about how to use them as divination tools, and then also how to use them in magical practice, which is something that I'm really excited that we're addressing, because a lot of divination practitioners will strictly talk about use of divination tools as divination, but don't really get into how to use them in a magical sense or in a practice. So that's awesome. And yeah, that's about it. Well, and Raw Magic Sorceress, that's my shop. I'm actually closing the storefront, and I'm just gonna go on Facebook with it, because yeah, it's a lot better. I find more connection that way.
I'm in the process of trying to move Starry-Eyed Supplies to a Wix-based site.
I have been following it.
I do not like website building whatsoever. Chris will be helping me later today, hopefully, because I can't stand it. It drives me crazy. It makes my brain go, why won't you work? Why? It's all counterintuitive as far as I'm concerned. Website building, it doesn't make any sense. Even Wix, which is fairly straightforward, I'm like, no, I need someone to just help me with this, and then I can go back to creating in the kitchen where I feel comfortable. But yeah, so that is an announcement for this channel, is that Starry-Eyed Supplies will be moving, and it will be really super easy once this is all done, because it would just be starryeyedsupplies.com instead of .co.uk. So it's not going to be a huge name change or anything like that to confuse people. It would just be .com, and I'm going to try and figure out how to redirect people anyway.
Oh, you can forward.
Yeah. Well, I'll be trying to work and figure that out later today. Wish me luck. Mercury retrograde, we pick the best times to do this stuff. Nearly Christmas, Mercury retrograde, let's change everything. Sounds like a solid plan. Okay, so thank you to Allorah for joining me today. This will be up later today, hopefully, if not tomorrow. And that's it for Views with Verse. I hope you guys enjoyed it. The links are down below. Many blessings, everybody.